Hello, everyone. She was just 16 when she posed for Victoria's Secret too young, too bold, too controversial. But Isabeli Fontana was never interested in playing by the rules. She entered fashion with the face of a saint and the fire of a rebel. And she made it clear from the start, she would not wait for permission. While others worried about scandal, she turned it into power. Brazil had produced many beauties, but Isabeli was different. She did not smile to be liked. She stared, unapologetically. She was not trying to become a star. She arrived already burning. But behind the campaigns, the angel wings, and the high-gloss glamour was a girl forced to grow up too fast, too alone, too visible. Who was Isabeli Fontana, really? And what did the industry take from the girl who dared to defy it at 16? Isabeli Fontana was born in 1983 in Curitiba, a city tucked into the south of Brazil, far from the glitter of São Paulo, and even further from the fashion capitals of the world. Her family was modest, traditional, with deep Italian roots and conservative values. In their world, beauty was not a currency. It was something to be guarded, not flaunted. But even as a child, Isabeli's beauty was undeniable, a face carved with impossible symmetry, ocean blue eyes under thick brows, and a stare that seemed to belong to someone much older. People noticed. They always noticed. But growing up beautiful in a strict household was not a gift. It was pressure. Isabeli was not raised to chase cameras. She was raised to behave, to lower her voice, to stay within the lines. But there was always a quiet rebellion in her, a flicker in the eyes, a hunger that did not match her surroundings. She felt trapped in small spaces, in rules, in uniforms, in classrooms that demanded she sit still. What she wanted, even if she could not name it yet, was more. Her first exposure to fashion came through television, Brazilian beauty contests, Miss Universe reruns, glossy commercials that felt like postcards from another planet. She did not dream of wearing the crown. She wanted to walk past it barefoot, fearless, untouchable. At 13, she began entering modeling competitions, often behind her parents' backs. There was one moment, one photo shoot where everything changed. The camera clicked, and Isabeli did not pose. She became, and in that instant, she knew the mirror had a different meaning for her. It was not vanity, it was escape. Her mother was torn, afraid of what the industry could do, but unable to deny what her daughter carried. There were arguments, nights of silence. But Isabeli, even then, was unshakable. She once told a scout, without flinching, "I am going to make it. Watch me." And they did. By the time she was 14, she was flying to São Paulo alone, booking jobs that girls years older only dreamed of. She was not polished. She was raw. But that rawness, that edge of danger, made her magnetic. Agencies called her intense. Photographers called her a natural. She was still a child, but the industry treated her like a woman, and she did not correct them. What no one saw in those early photos was the weight behind the gaze, the knowledge that she would have to protect herself not just from men, but from expectation, from myth, from becoming a product before she knew who she was. Isabeli Fontana did not stumble into fashion. She carved her way in, armed only with instinct, ambition, and the kind of beauty that could both open doors and burn bridges behind her. Isabeli Fontana's discovery was not a Cinderella moment. There was no chance meeting in a mall, no golden spotlight falling from the sky. It was grit. It was hustle. It was a teenager taking charge of her own destiny in an industry that rarely waited for permission. At just 13, Isabeli entered the elite model look contest in Brazil. She had no famous last name, No backing, just a face that stopped time and a stare that refused to blink. She made it to the finals and caught the attention of agents who saw something volatile, something powerful, something they could not quite control. That was the beginning. At 14, she was on a plane to Europe, alone, her passport barely broken in, her English broken even more. But none of that mattered when the camera came out. In Milan, she stood in line beside girls 5, sometimes 10 years older, and booked jobs they only dreamed about. There was a fire in her, not loud, not frantic, but steady, untouchable. She did not smile to charm. She did not flirt to win. She stared, with all the weight of someone who already knew what the world wanted from her and had decided she would only give a fraction. Then came the call that changed everything. Victoria's Secret wanted her. She was 16. The shoot was bold, risky, controversial, a teenage girl in lingerie, printed in catalogs across America. The public outcry was instant. Politicians spoke out. Editorials questioned the ethics. Victoria's Secret removed her images. But Isabeli, barely old enough to vote, barely old enough to drive, refused to collapse under the pressure. She stood her ground. She had not asked for scandal. She had asked for a career. And the noise only made her more visible. Within months, every major fashion house wanted her. She walked for Versace, Valentino, and Jean-Paul Gaultier. Photographers like Steven Meisel and Mario Testino began requesting her by name. What others saw as too much, the industry now branded as the new face of power. Isabeli was not just another pretty girl. She was mood. She was attitude. She was the edge fashion had been missing. But behind the fast rise was a dangerous truth. Isabeli was still a girl, still learning how to say no, still pretending she understood contracts, politics, fame. Her days were booked from dawn to midnight. Her body scrutinized in ways that left no room for softness, for humanity. She was praised for her maturity, but no one asked what it had cost her to grow up so fast. She missed birthdays, missed home, missed pieces of herself she would not realize were gone until years later. But she pushed through, because that is what the industry rewards endurance. And Isabeli Fontana, even in her teens, was a survivor. By 18, she had already achieved what most models never do. But she did not pause. She did not celebrate. She just moved on to the next shoot, the next campaign, the next country. Always moving, always watching, always aware that in fashion, fame is only yours until someone younger arrives with hungrier eyes. And yet, through it all, Isabeli remained unshaken. Her gaze did not soften. Her stride did not falter. She had been thrown into the fire, and instead of burning, she lit the runway with it. By the time Isabeli Fontana turned 20, she had already become what most models spent entire careers chasing, a face the world could not forget. But it was not just her beauty that secured her golden era. It was her resilience, her refusal to soften her edges, her unapologetic command of every frame, every runway, every room. In an industry flooded with perfection, Isabeli made intensity fashionable. Her rise was not just meteoric, it was sustained. She did not fade after one campaign or burn out after one season. She remained, and that made her rare. Designers came and went, trends evolved, but Isabeli's presence never dulled. She became a fixture in campaigns for Versace, Valentino, Armani, and Balmain. She posed for the covers of Vogue, Elle, Harper's Bazaar, and Numero. And each time, she brought something new, a different layer of womanhood, power, fire. She was not selling a fantasy. She was confronting it. What made her golden era iconic was how she embodied contradiction. She could be fierce without ever moving, soft without smiling, timeless without playing into nostalgia. She was the kind of model who did not just wear clothes, she made them feel alive. She made them dangerous. Victoria's Secret welcomed her back, not as a controversy, but as an icon. She walked their runway with wings that looked more like armor than decoration. While others flirted with the camera, Isabeli stared it down. There was no pretense, no playing cute. She knew what the audience wanted and chose to give them something harder to digest, something real. Her energy on the runway became legendary, controlled, calculated, pure presence. She walked like a woman who had fought her way into the room and would not apologize for staying. Her posture spoke louder than interviews ever could, and the fashion world took notice. She became not just a favorite, but a necessity. The kind of face editors requested when the shoot needed weight, when the campaign needed fire, when the moment needed a spine. But her peak was not about quantity. It was about clarity. Isabeli knew who she was, and she did not try to be anyone else. No reinvention, no gimmicks, no attempt to follow the trends. She let the world move around her while she stayed rooted, fierce, grounded, unmovable. For years, she ruled without needing to declare it. And that was her greatest flex. She never had to prove she was one of the greats. She simply was. Isabeli Fontana never asked for the industry's approval, and she never waited for its permission. From the beginning, she moved like someone who already knew the rules and had no interest in playing by them. In a world obsessed with politeness, she was unapologetic. In a culture addicted to trends, she stayed still. Isabeli did not change to fit fashion. She made fashion reshape itself around her. What set her apart was not just her face, it was her fire. While others softened to stay likable, Isabeli sharpened. She embraced the parts of herself the industry often tried to flatten: her attitude, her depth, her unapologetic sexuality. She did not dilute her presence to be more marketable. She leaned into it raw, powerful, and sometimes intimidating. And that made her unforgettable. At a time when Brazilian models were often branded with a single narrative: sun-kissed, sensual, smiling, Isabeli disrupted the stereotype. Her beauty was not warm, it was electric. Her eyes did not flirt, they dared. She was the anti-cliché, the woman who could wear the same lingerie as everyone else and make it feel like armor. Her presence on set often shifted the energy. She did not need to speak loudly. Her silence could silence a room. She also refused to disappear into the role of the muse. Behind the camera, she paid attention, she watched, she learned. And eventually, she began producing her own creative projects, asserting herself not just as a body, but as a mind, one capable of direction, curation, authorship. For a model to seek that kind of control was considered unusual. But Isabeli never cared for expectations. She aged in the industry without apology. When so many women were told their time was up at 30, Isabeli was still walking runways, still landing campaigns, still breaking expectations. She did not chase youth. She embodied evolution. Her body changed. Her energy deepened. But the power, the stare, the steel remained untouched. She also opened up about the realities of her life, about motherhood, about body image, about the pressures that tried to shrink her spirit. And yet, even in vulnerability, she never played victim. She owned her story. She spoke without shame. She let the world see her battle scars not as weaknesses, but as proof that she had survived everything fame tried to erase. Isabeli Fontana's difference was not in what she did. It was in what she refused to do. She refused to conform, refused to perform, refused to fade. And in a world that constantly tries to replace its women, Isabeli made herself irreplaceable not because she followed the system, but because she stared it down and dared it to blink first. Isabeli Fontana never had a public collapse. There were no rehab headlines, no courtroom appearances, no dramatic press statements. Her fall was quieter, slower, but no less painful. It came not from scandal, but from wear, from the weight of years spent growing up under the spotlight, in high heels, on airplanes, smiling through exhaustion. It was not a single moment. It was accumulation. She started to feel it in her late 20s, the disconnection, the fatigue, the feeling that no matter how far she had come, the world still looked at her and only saw the body, the hair, the angles. Not the woman, not the bruises underneath the image. She had given so much of herself to fashion that, at some point, she realized she no longer knew what was hers to keep. There were personal struggles too quiet, unspoken, the kind that do not make headlines, but leave permanent shadows. Relationships that did not last, promises made under pressure, the guilt of being a mother while living out of a suitcase, the constant negotiation between public image and private wounds. She spoke about it later, not with drama, but with clarity. She admitted to the pain of being sexualized as a teenager, of being told to lose weight, to smile more, to tone it down when she did not fit the fantasy. She spoke about how the same industry that built her pedestal was also ready to kick it out from under her the moment she aged, the moment she questioned, the moment she asked for more. And so she pulled back. She did not announce it. She simply began choosing differently. Fewer runways, more editorials, more work in Brazil, close to home, more time with her children, more control over her image, her story, her boundaries. She started saying no, not to spite the industry, but to protect what remained of herself. During this time, she explored wellness, healing, spirituality. She began speaking openly about mental health, body acceptance, and the dangerous standards that nearly broke her. Her voice shifted. She was no longer just a model. She was a woman returning to herself, reclaiming the parts the industry forgot to protect. And yet, even in withdrawal, Isabeli never fully vanished. She continued to appear in campaigns, sometimes more radiant than ever. But now, there was a different energy, slower, deeper, more sovereign. She was no longer proving anything. She was simply living. Her fall was not a breakdown. It was a return, a quiet rebellion against a system that takes and takes until you forget who you were before it all. Isabeli Fontana chose to remember, and in doing so, she began again, not as a girl chasing light, but as a woman who had learned how to carry her own. Isabeli Fontana never needed a crown. She never built an empire. She never staged a comeback. And yet, she remains carved into the memory of fashion, like a scar that healed beautifully but never fully faded. Her legacy is not in how long she stayed on the runways, but in how deeply she marked them. She redefined what it meant to be fierce, not loud, not performative, but steady, relentless, uncompromising. She entered the industry as a girl with fire in her eyes and walked out as a woman who never let that fire be extinguished. Even when the world tried to dress her up, slow her down, or strip her of control, Isabeli found ways to keep something sacred for herself. Today, she still models, still stuns, but without the urgency of survival, without the burden of proving. She lives on her own terms. A woman who has known fame, pressure, silence, and rebirth, and now walks with all of them braided into her posture. Her legacy is not a single image. It is the echo of resistance, the reminder that you can enter the machine and still leave whole, that you can be desired without being owned, that you can be beautiful and difficult, soft and sharp, fragile and indestructible all at once. Isabeli Fontana was never just the face. She was the fight behind it,